Did you introduce yourself yet or no?
I have not, no. I'm
No?
Stephanie, and I work in academic advising for the past number of years. So yeah, thank you for having this open forum. I think this is really going to be beneficial. I think it's a great platform that maybe I know we haven't as advisors explored yet. So thank you for that, and I'm glad that you guys invited us so that we can have some dialogue.
Yeah, totally. For those that don't know me, my name's Noelle. I'm the Vice President of Student Affairs with UWSA. I focus primarily on student advocacy, and we're doing this live chat with Stephanie and the academic advising team to help address a lot of the questions that students have had. We really empathize with the fact that students are going through unprecedented challenges, and we're going to try our best to alleviate some of this stress for y'all. We really want to work together with academic advisors during this time. A lot of the things we strive for are quite similar. We have a lot of common goals, and things are pretty tough for everybody all around right now with everything being moved online. There's a lot of learning curves for everybody, especially students trying to access, academia with no physical interaction. So yeah, we're going to be talking about appeals, different things like that for people who might want to know how to apply for a deferred exam or extensions on assignments. So if you had any questions, I'll keep repeating this throughout the chat as people join in and out. But if you have questions, just type them below and I'll try to catch them as I come up and jot them down for Stephanie to answer. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. The UWSA recently passed a GPA motion that we had presented to Senate. So what does this mean for students now? Could you help explain this motion and how this can affect students' GPA?
Sure, absolutely. So there's basically three options. One is the status quo, so that whatever grade you get, you have. The second is where students can choose whether or not they have an S for standing. I'm going to explain this more. Or they fail because it has to be a passing grade in order for it to be an S. And then, of course, the students can choose to keep their grade, but it wouldn't be calculated. There'd be a note on the transcript that that specific grade is not calculated in the GPA. So I think the one that maybe we've had the most conversation about, or that I've sort of had the most conversation about with students and my other advisors, would be the S for standing one. And yeah. So sort of the very short answer is if you get like a D, then it would probably be a good idea to take the S for standing. Because you might, or the other reason why to take the D or to take the S for standing is that if you're on probation or you're anywhere close to perhaps being at risk of suspension, then the S for standing would not be calculated for your status. So that would be an instance where it would be a good idea to take the course or to take the S. I mean, what you have to remember, though, if you take the S, is that if there's a specific prereq for a course, if you're just starting out in your program, and there's a specific prereq, meaning a specific grade that you need, and it's usually higher than a C, then you'll have to either retake the course or you just take whatever grade you have. Also, if it's a performance requirement, so for example, honors, you need a 3.0. So in terms of the actual program itself, so you need to maintain that. And then also applying into professional programs that are outside of UW, we don't know how that's going to be evaluated. So you have to just make sure that you follow up with that and find, just like UW will have to do, right? Those other institutes may assess that a little bit differently. And I want to note at this time too, the two departments that have sort of voiced like a definitive answer is, one is business. So their S for standing is a C+. So if you don't have at least a C+, then there's no point in taking S for standing, right? You won't be able to. If you have a C or a D, you'll just have to repeat the course. And kinesiology with their athletic therapy, the certification program, the certification program does not accept S's. So if there's any kinesiology students there, kinesiology is sort of saying stay away from the S's because it might be a little bit more problematic in the different kinds of certifications. There's so many different certifications in kinesiology. So that would be probably why. And also scholarships, athletic or academic scholarships, and maybe bursaries, or if you're funded, then for awards and financial aid to calculate the your GPA for awards or bursaries, they need an actual grade. So the S for wouldn't cut it. But I mean, at the end, come talk to advisors, come email us advising@uwinnipeg.ca, talk with your chair, both of us, whichever, so that we can help you make that decision, because everybody's going to be different, the issues surrounding that decision. So yeah, that's the
cool. Thanks.
part of the grade piece.
So someone asked, can we still use the course that we choose to include on our GPA calculation as a prerequisite for our degree? It's worded kind of tricky, but what I think they mean, what I'm understanding, is that if they decide to choose an S, can it be used later on as a prereq? So is that my understanding?
I hear it in two different ways. The first way, as you summarized, if the department has a specific grade prereq, like you need a C+ or higher, it's usually what that. Then an S isn't going to cut it. And that's why it's important. Some of the departments haven't been so definitive about how they're going to assess the S, so don't assume it's going to be like, I'd assume that it's equated to a C, like at this point. So that's why we talk about that. The other piece of her question is what I understood, is that if she takes the course, she gets a grade, but she doesn't want the grade calculated in the GPA, can that course be used as a prereq? Well, only, again, your grade is going to be there only if that grade is the minimum prereq for whatever course you're trying to get into. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Okay. There's some other questions. I'm just going to jot them down because we'll kind of get to them later. So I guess you kind of already talked about this. You talked a lot about which scenarios it would make sense to have the S on the transcript, and also what scenarios it wouldn't make any sense. So I think if people have additional questions on that, maybe just drop a line there.
Absolutely.
So the next question is talking about appeals.
Okay.
How can students submit an appeal if they need extra time to complete an assignment or write an exam due to circumstances around the pandemic?
Okay, so some of you may be familiar with appeals. For those of you that need a reminder that are not, you always come to an academic advisor to discuss that option, because as every student scenario is a little bit different, and we want to make sure that you're doing what makes sense for you at the time. So come see us for deferred exams, for incomplete term work. We've developed more of a streamlined approach for the appeals, so it's a little less, I guess, cumbersome, for lack of a better word, on students. So we sort of step in and we contact the professor, and with the COVID going on, that's a great consideration in granting the appeal. And so in that way, it's simplified, and we totally acknowledge that that this has created a lot of bumps and bruises. So we are trying to accommodate the best we can for our students so that you can pick up the term.
Make it a bit easier. Great. So if circumstances don't return to normal at the university, what should students expect? I know someone asked earlier what fall semester could potentially look like.
Yeah, so that's a big question, right? And it's a tough one because we don't know what the circumstances are going to be like. And they may be well set up like the winter, at the end of winter and the beginning of spring, without the chaos. Or maybe there will be half of the classroom, half of the capacity, right? There could be some adjustments as we slowly sort of merge back. We do have to follow Manitoba health regulations. So that's always
Yeah.
the piece of the decision making. I mean, if you look back at the amount of time, like it's been a month, maybe, I think. And if you look back and just see how we've acted and reacted to the situation, I think that speaks volumes of the resiliency of the students, of the staff, of the faculty, and that you're still dedicated to your studies. I mean, not without bumps or bruises, right? But definitely in that short amount of time, we were able to create this whole other environment that we're still kind of trying to navigate, and it's going to be changing. So to say, you know, how it's going to look, that's a really hard question. Of course, I think, Noelle, you had mentioned earlier that we're taking this day by day. We are, of course, all in this together. U of W is continually working to adapt and to, you know, provide you services that you need. So that's a constant, meetings, and working things out and bringing the professionals, the people that know what they're doing. I mean, so yeah, and of course, part of it is knowing and learning and accessing what the tools that are available for you. So everything's going to be moved online if it hasn't been already. So study skills, the wellness team, accessibility services, these are still all available for you, but yes, in a very much different format. And we are definitely developing tools, like as we speak. Our team is definitely doing that. And you know, it is a way to embrace. This has been hard for me too, to embrace new ways of learning and communicating. And it's opened up a new portal, I think, in some way, shape, or form that's going to just stick with us. Like this is, you know, this is going to be more of a reality than anything else now. So yeah,
and I think it's also important to note too, like, we already mentioned how everything's kind of being taken day by day. Like, for example, today the province extended the state of emergency for another 30 days because it was enacted last month on March 20th. So sometimes we might not know things, you know, until a couple weeks before, which is unfortunate, but so far we've been able to adapt pretty well to most things, and there's always going to be little kinks and things that we have to work out, but sometimes during a pandemic with such short notice, those are kind of the only options we have, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Okay, so another question is with everything moving online, this presents a new navigation of online platforms and websites. Are there any must-know tips for Nexus or WebAdvisor? What about other university services? And are there any sites or online tip resources students should know about?
So there is a online student learning technology. So if you Google search that, that explains all of the platforms from Nexus to asynchronous to synchronous. And all you need to do is Google search student learning technologies, and that will come up right away. So in terms of understanding and to navigate, that's definitely a resource that that would be very useful for all students, included. Ultimately, university profs and staff are going to be providing or have already provided guidelines on how to best approach learning and coursework. I think choosing courses, even in the online platforms, so synchronous versus asynchronous. So life is a balance right now, and you also have to set, like, I know I've had to set boundaries, and people will have to set boundaries within their own household in terms of when they're working, when they can access internet, when they can't access internet. So that's an honest sit down conversation you have to have. Make a schedule, whatever works for your unit is, you know, works well for you. So yeah, the synchronous is the format where it's shared, and it could be twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that will work for you. And you might need that extra little sort of, I guess, tool in order to do well in your class. Or maybe it's very, you know, spotty when you get internet, or maybe there's lots of people that you're sharing internet with, and maybe do the asynchronous. That's a separate one, right? That's more individualized, and you can do it when you can. And like I said, the other resources, just the whole study life, work balance, the tips that are available. And I know that you guys are hosting a team of healthcare professionals, I think, on Facebook on Thursday, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
I think that's awesome. That's great. So the professionals will have some like great suggestions for you. Community health organizations like ADAM, which is the Anxiety Disorder Association of Manitoba, they're doing phone phone conversations, and I think it's every day of the week, like during like 9 to 5 sort of thing. So also other university resources. So
Yeah.
how does Carleton do things? How does York do things? How's U of M doing things? So all of those resources you can access as well. Like that's, you know, I'm finding resources for students. I often am on other universities' websites. So that helps. And I think changing and managing your expectation, it's not a bad thing, right? It's changed now. So what your expectation of what ABC looked like 2 months ago or even a month ago, you're going to have to, that's probably going to be rejigged. I know that it has for me. And then in 3 months or in a month from now, like Noelle, as you were saying, we get new information all the time, right? And so then you work within that. So you kind of have to rejig it. So it's kind of like you're kind of swimming around like a little fish between things. And so it's hard to like, whoa, how am I going to make this work? So, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? I know that this is, I think, a great forum to start the dialogue in, but yeah, I mean, just, changing and managing your expectations is important. Reaching out, asking questions.
Yeah.
Embracing the new technology.
Yeah, there's also a service called Beacon for digital counseling, and it's included in the Green Shield coverage for U of W students here too. So we've received a couple questions, so I'll just go through those. Someone asked, for spring courses, if we're waitlisted, can we get permission from a professor if we really want to take a course in the spring term?
I wish that for all students, they could get into their courses that they need. However, the reality of it is that at the end of the day, the wait list will kind of ebb and flow. A lot of students do drop courses. They've put themselves in more courses perhaps than they actually need. And so you will find the flux of the wait list. It's hard, I see more so if students are like, that's their last course that you need to register for before graduation, then you might want to have that discussion with an advisor as well to sort of best, how do you present that to the prof that you're on the wait list for, right? So in certain circumstances, maybe, the prof could help you out with that, but really they do stick to the wait list. But if you do have questions or there's sort of an urgency or there's a stress that's making you anxious about that, then, email advising and we can talk about different strategies.
Yeah. We have a few other questions here. Someone asked if academic advising is available during the pandemic still.
We are here. I was going to say 24/7, but that's not true.
No.
I mean, you can email us 24/7, but we're keeping regular hours, 8:30 to 4:30. And if you haven't already made a connection with an advisor, then you can email academicadvising@uwinnipeg.ca, and our wonderful assistant will forward the emails to the advisors. We're answering many emails. You guys are keeping us super busy, so that's a good thing, and that we can still help you in this new way. So you can do email advising, like if you just want to go back and forth email, you can do Zoom, and you can also do phone calls. So you can request any of those three if you do have a preference. When you email, I just suggest that you include your student number, name, and what you're majoring in. That would be really helpful for us.
Awesome. For those that have just joined or joined later, we're taking questions in the comments. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask and we'll get to them. There's a couple more. Someone was asking if you can attend, like since spring courses will be all online, can you, let me just reread this, sorry.
I bet I know what the question is.
I think they're asking if a student can attend an online lecture twice, if it's being given at 2 different times for the same course.
So 2 different sections?
Yeah, I think that's maybe what they're asking.
You would only have access to one, like the way the Nexus would be set up is that you would only have access to one of the sections. I don't know if there's, and I'm not a tech person, so I don't know if there's actually a way to do that or not, for you to be allowed access through Nexus or through whatever to two different sections. Like, I mean, I would probably follow up with that question. But yeah, I don't know if it makes things more complicated or if it's really not a big deal or if it's not complicated. So how about I sort of figure that out, or I look into that a little bit more for you, and then I'll let you know.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Someone asked if they can still send in a major declaration. So I guess they're wondering if that can be done online.
Yeah, actually, Students Central put up some online forms. So if you go to forms, I'm actually opening it up right now. I just want to see. I believe that if you go to the Google search forms, or however you get to them, that they've put up. So it doesn't look like they put up the forms. I'm just looking. Did they? Oh, they did. Yeah. So there's online forms now. Sweet.
Okay, perfect.
Sure. So just go to the form section and you'll see those. And if they're not available, then email student. If you're looking for a certain form that you'd normally go to Student Central for, so look under the forms, see if they're there. If they're not, then email Student Central and just ask them, because they could be there could be, maybe they're still doing, changing catalog year or continuance applications.
Yeah.
Like there might be that are in process. So just ask.
Awesome. Someone said they're an undergrad student and they tried to drop a course, but the course is still listed on their plan as registered. They asked, what's up with that?
Okay. So if this was a I'm assuming that this was a winter course, what I would do is email advising, and we can follow up much more thoroughly that way, and just see kind of what's going on, what the circumstances were. So academicadvising@uwinnipeg.ca.
Perfect. Another person asked again if school's reopening in September. So for those that might have joined late, Stephanie was kind of mentioning that we're just rolling with the flow right now. We don't really know how things are going to go. Today, the province extended the state of emergency for another month. So we really don't know if that's going to continue throughout the summer or not. Things might look differently. Maybe some classes will be offered in person, maybe some will not. We really aren't sure. We kind of have to wait for the lead from the province really on that. And then senior administration will make that call. So someone else asked, some courses that haven't started registration yet are already full. Is there any way to register for those courses?
So registration is open. So I'm not quite sure I understand what the question is. Like you can put yourself on a wait list.
Yeah, I think what they're saying is that registration hasn't started yet for some courses or for courses yet, but some are already full.
Well, that means that you had a later registration date, right? So it's just that people were able to register before you. And so it just depends what your tier is. It's based on how many credit hours you have. The ones that are newer and the ones that are about to graduate, those are usually the ones that are first to register. So put yourself on a wait list. And then again, like if you're a little confused or you're not sure about what course you could take, or, does it fulfill something or doesn't it, then email academic advising and we can figure out what course could work for you. There's like over 200 courses online, which I'm very impressed about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. And a lot of faculties like psychology and other faculties that were prior, like not online presence, not much of an online presence, have now sort of stepped that up. So it's great. Opens it up for more learning, for sure.
Yeah. And a good point that I think Frank just commented here is that in order to register drop classes, there could be potential holds on the account, or out-of-date emergency contact info that needs to be updated. So that can definitely prevent you from dropping or registering for a class.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Frank.
I actually I'm not sure if there's any other questions in the queue. Again, for those that just joined the chat, feel free to comment questions in the comment box there, and we'll get to them if you have any questions for advisors or UWSA. Oh, someone asked, if there is no wait list for a class, how do you get notified if a space opens up?
If there's no wait list for a class?
Yeah.
You'd have to be on a wait list in order to be notified. So if you register, you get the last spot, you get the spot. But if you're put yourself on the wait list, then you will be notified by email to say that there's a spot that's opened up. So check your webmail on a regular basis so that you can claim that spot. Because unfortunately what happens is, I think it's a 72 hours where you have to claim it, right? And then otherwise you'll be put to the back of the bus.
Yeah.
So yeah, just make sure that you check your webmail when you're on the wait list.
The same student, I guess, is noting that in education, there's some classes that don't have a wait list. So I think that's why they're wondering, if there's no wait list, how do you get notified if a space opens up?
Oh, I see. Okay, I see what you're saying. So those are specific, like, practicum courses that are a little bit different than the general degrees. So I would contact the professor and just ask, or Deb Bradley, she's the education advisor, D.Bradley, B-R-A-D-L-E-Y, D.Bradley@uwinnipeg.ca. So she can maybe give you a little bit more insight on that. They could reach off of class. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So Anna said they could reach out to the professor. Okay. So another student asked, for classes that have limited seating, for example, business classes, which new prerequisites, let me reread that. Oh, I guess they're wondering, for classes that have limited seating, will more sections be created in September?
I don't know. I would certainly hope so, with given the time. I mean, that there's a few different factors involved. It could be a matter of their budget, being able to hire somebody. It could be the proper prof available to teach that course. What is the need for the course, right? So there's a few variables. But usually in the fall time, there are more sections. So the mandatory sections, the fundamentals or the intro business courses, all of those, there's usually quite a few of those to choose from, sections to choose, especially in the fall and the winter.
Yeah. I think it's also important to note too, for students that are watching, that it's usually like a department by department, case by case kind of thing. So advisors might not know when certain courses are going to be, when there's going to be, more sections created, or what's really going to be offered. It's kind of decided by department.
Yeah, we basically know when you know, like when the timetable comes out, that's when we find out.
Yeah. A lot of people are asking if we could go over the alternative option for grades again. So the GPA motion that the UWSA brought forward. Would you be able to go over that again, Stephanie?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So one, you can keep your grade as it is. Two is that you can choose an S for standing. You have to pass the course in order to choose that S for standing. And then the third one is, if you want to still have the course and the grade, except the grade itself is not calculated into the GPA. So those are the three options. We discussed a little bit more in detail about the S for standing, because that seems to be the one that maybe people are a little confused about, or they just need more information about. So S for standing, basically you should take it if you have a bad grade, like a D, right? A D, or I guess even a C, because the S for standing for the most part is not calculated into your GPA. But when if you're trying to get into a certain program, or you're trying to get into a certain course that has a prereq of a C+ or a B, and you don't have that, that S for standing isn't going to cut it. The S for standing is beneficial for students that are perhaps near probation, on probation, to minimize the risk of slipping into academic suspension, because it's not calculated in the GPA. So if you've got a D and that's the case, then you might want to take an S for standing. But again, just looking forward, it might be a prereq for a certain course that you need for your program. Or for honors, for example, you need to keep a minimum of a 3.0, and then applying into other professional programs. We don't know how those other institutes are going to evaluate that S, and there's no knowing until you actually ask that question, and all universities are going to have to figure that out, right? Also, students that are applying or have scholarships, academic or athletic scholarships, bursaries, awards needs an actual grade to calculate whether or not you're applicable for a certain bursary or scholarship. So make sure that that the S wouldn't be a suitable option in that case. So make sure you ask academic advising if you're like S or no S, or GPA or no GPA, and we can sort of help you flush that out and figure out what the best choice for you would be. But yeah, talk to us, talk to the chair. Business is the only department that has clearly articulated and equated an S for standing as a C+. So for the business students, you can't take an S for standing unless you have a minimum of a C+, because that's the prereq for other courses, as you know, with the changes. So, and kinesiology, so talking about certifications, kinesiology doesn't honor S for standings. They don't recognize those. So not kinesiology, but the athletic therapy program certification in particular. And kinesiology, they have like trainer, like there's lots of different certifications you can get within kinesiology. So kinesiology is sort of saying, the S for standing was probably not a good idea for you.
Right. And what happens if you are found guilty of academic misconduct?
Good question. If you have been found guilty of academic misconduct, you cannot, these options are not present for you. Thank you.
Okay. No problem. Someone asked, how do we let the U of W or their specific department know about the alternative grade option that they choose?
So right now, records and advising, we're developing how that's going to be housed and the form for it and the process of it. So just hang tight for now. If you're, there will be an answer, I think, within the next couple days in terms of where it's actually being housed and who's processing it. So if you have questions about that, you can email us, or just like sit tight and we'll have that information sooner than later for you. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. And is there a deadline for the alternative grade option?
So May 10th is something to think about, because that's when grades are submitted from the profs. However, you do have a deadline of May 28th to fill out that form.
Awesome. Okay. Those are all the questions we had. So if no one else has any questions in the comments, I don't see any new ones. Let me just make sure I got all of them. Yeah, if anybody has any additional questions, just email academic advising and they'll get back to you. They've got a great team of people, super eager to help all of you out and to help make this transition during the pandemic as smooth as possible. So thanks, Stephanie, for doing this chat with us. We really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm sure students learned a lot. It's nice to engage.
And thank you so much for the opportunity. And as you were saying, Noelle, we're here for the students to try and help you navigate in this crazy time and help each other out. And we'll figure it out together. And we will provide you with any information as it changes and as we know it. Then we'll be there. So academicadvising@uwinnipeg.ca.
Perfect.
And
hey, thank you.
Yourselves.
Yes, students.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.